Thank you so much for tuning in today for episode 2 of Behind the Mask, which I have titled What's Left Behind. When I was trying to come up with some different topics and different things that I was going to talk about on my podcast, I had made a list of the things that I knew I wanted to cover. And there was this one particular that I'm going to talk about today that I was so excited to talk about. I've talked about to several groups of people. Something that I talk about to women, talk about it to young girls, to young adults. It's on just the issue of self-image and a self-concept and having a positive self-image. This is something that we struggle with as women constantly. You struggle with it from a little girl on through your teenage years when you're concerned and worried about what people think about you and how you look when you go out in public, and you're always constantly asking, does this look okay? Are you sure I look okay? And you're asking your husband then when you get married, do these jeans make my butt look big? We are constantly seeking that approval, and it all begins because there's a little bit of self-doubt that when we look at ourselves in the mirror, we're just not all that pleased with ourselves. And if you remember back to episode 1, and I got to say, if you haven't listened to episode 1, go back and listen to it. It's called Stop Apologizing. It kind of explains just a little bit of where I've come from and how I've gotten to where I am, and just some things that I experienced a few years ago when I was ready to throw in the towel on this whole thing called life. But when I went to my husband and I told him that I quit, I quit being a mom, I quit being a wife, I'm just done. It didn't get better overnight. Okay, a lot of people have asked me, how did you get through this? How did you get over this? This is now 10 years ago. How did you get through it? Well, you can't. It took us 10 years to get to that point that we were at. I wasn't going to be able to turn this big ship around that quickly. When you turn a big ship and you're steering, a big cruise liner, it's different than turning a speedboat. And if you look at your life as a big cruise ship, you've got to turn it carefully. You don't want the people on board to fall over and things fall out of your boat. So you've got to steer it carefully, and you've got to take things slow, and you've got to be patient. It's going to take some time. So I know when I see people that are struggling and I see people that are looking for answers, and they come to me and they're like, what do I do about this? And I say, I know you want an answer that's going to fix it today, or that will even fix it tomorrow. But you can't steer this big cruise ship of life and just turn it on a dime. It took you a while to get to where you are. It's going to take a while to get it to where you want it. So we decided that there were some things that we needed to change in our lives if we were going to steer this big cruise ship to a new direction. One of the things that, a really big important thing that my husband took over is our finances. And this is a whole nother thing that I'm going to talk about another day. But, a lot of times, and I don't know how it is in your household, but in a lot of households, the wives are taking care of most of the things in the house, the housework, cooking, cleaning, and then also paying the bills, keeping up with the finances, making sure what's going out and seeing what's coming in. And it's a lot of pressure, and it's a lot of things that you're trying to do on top of everything else that you have to do. Like I said last time, when you have all these hats that you're wearing or these masks that you're wearing, you have to put banker on top of that and accountant on top of that. And so a lot of stress gets put on you. And that was just another one of those things. And so one of the small things that we decided was that my husband would start taking that over. So that was a big thing. And I'll talk about that another time, but that was a huge weight off of my shoulders. Another thing is that my husband recognized, and we kind of talked about how and if you know my husband, he likes to be the center of attention, and he likes to be around people. And, he's always wanting to have a get together. Hey, let's get together and go do this with this other group of people. Or let's go out to eat with a big group of people. Let's go out to the movies with a big group of people. And he's always wanting to go do things with a big group of people. Now, I like people, and I like going and doing those things. But then there just comes a time where I like to be alone. And I just like to do things alone. And I can just sense myself starting to feel like this sensory overload. Like, okay, I've been around people all day, talking, making small talk. I'm ready just to be alone. And I like to read books. I like to watch TV. You know, I have lots of my TV shows. Well, you know, not TV, but Netflix and my shows that I watch. And I like to just be alone. And so that was another thing we talked about, was to have a time where I'm alone. And alone time doesn't mean having one of the kids with me. You know, because like I said, when we were trying to make some changes in our lives, when I went through my moment where I quit, you know, I had 4 small children. And there was at least one with me 24 hours. I mean, you understand how you have them in your bed in the middle of the night. You put them all to bed in their own beds, and you wake up at some point and you've got 1 or 2, in our case, in bed with you. And so even in my sleep, I would have a kid with me. And so we recognized that I needed that time to be by myself. And, you know, I've been to lots of women's conferences and women's Bible studies, and they talk about, and they give that analogy of when you're on an airplane and the oxygen masks come down, and you put the oxygen mask on yourself first. Because if you're not there to take care of the little children, you know, they're going to suffer. And so you need to put the oxygen on yourself first so that you can help others. And the same is true. And I had heard that for years, but this is honestly true. You have to understand what your needs are and take care of yourself so that you can help others. I recognized that I needed that time by myself. And it wasn't selfish. It wasn't me, I need me time. I didn't spend a lot of money. I didn't go to get my nails done, didn't go get my hair done. I just went and did something by myself. I didn't really listen to music. At that time, I didn't really watch TV. I just went and did something quiet by myself because I needed that alone time, a time to take care of myself, putting that oxygen mask on myself so that I could come home and have energy and have that mental strength to help everybody else in the house. And so that was another small step that we talked about. Another one we talked about is going to our women's Bible study at church. Now, I had stopped going to our women's Bible study for a couple of reasons. One, I was the Bible study leader, and I didn't want to do it anymore. So, because that was one of the things I quit, and so I didn't go to that anymore. So, at one point in time, though, because my husband was the pastor of our church, in several churches, at one time over my career as a pastor's wife, I've been the children's pastor, I've been the youth pastor, I've been the women's ministry leader. The only thing I haven't done is anything to do with worship because I am not musical at all. I take that back. I did work in the sound booth for a couple of years, clicking the little button to change the words up on the wall. So I did have to go to worship practice in the mornings and be able to put the songs up there on the wall and be able to change the slide from one to another so that the congregation could sing along. So I have actually been on part of the worship team. But one of the things we decided was that I probably needed to go to a Bible study, the women's Bible study. And this would be a good time because I would go without a kid hanging on, without a kid underfoot, and my husband would stay home and take care of the kiddos, and I would be free to go and hang out with the ladies and have a time where I had grown-up talk because I had just been at home with kids for so long. And I was hesitant at first. You know, I don't think you understand when you're with kids all day and you're a stay-at-home mom, and then you go and you're going to sit with other moms, you feel inadequate. Like they're going to know all the things that you do wrong. And you're going to have to talk about maybe the things that you do wrong. And it's going to make you feel uncomfortable. And you shouldn't feel that way because you're the pastor's wife and you shouldn't have things that you feel bad about. So you don't say anything and you listen to the other ladies talk about their problems and they give each other advice and they build each other up. But I would never join in those conversations because, I didn't feel like I was allowed to because I was not supposed to have any problems. And so I just kind of sat as an innocent bystander for a while. But I remember we were doing a Bible study of a well-known author, and she's published and written a lot of Bible studies, and you've probably all done a Bible study of hers before, but I remember one particular chapter, and I didn't read ahead. I had gotten busy and things came up, so I didn't get to read, so I didn't know what we were going to be talking about that night. And this is the thing that I want to talk about today and why this is titled What's Left Behind, because it was so amazing. And I'm telling you, once I got this revelation, this understanding that I'm going to tell you about today, I'm recording this at night. So, that I'm going to talk to you about right now, it was life-changing for me. And I hope that it becomes life-changing, and maybe it doesn't right away, but at some point starts to sink in and you start to grasp this, because it was so amazing. I literally felt a weight lift off my shoulders and just feel so much better about myself. I'd always kind of struggled with a self-image. And when I look in the mirror, I don't always like what I see. And I see, especially now in my 40s, I see things that I look at and I see my mom. And I always thought my mom was a beautiful lady, but I look like her now. I've got her skin. I see I'm like, oh, that's my mom. I have my mom's hands. I can see those age spots on my hands, and I go, oh, that's my mom, which I cherish now. But as I was aging in my late 20s and 30s, you kind of go through this midlife crisis almost, where you're thinking, no, where's my teenage skin? Where's my teenage body? It's gone. And so as I felt inadequate in my own skin and my own body, I felt inadequate as a mom and a wife. And I thought, surely if I feel this way about myself, I know God feels this way about me. When he looks at me, he sees the same thing. Somebody that just doesn't measure up, and somebody that just can't get right, that just struggles and just can't get it. And so, I'll go to the Bible study, I'll go through the motions. And then this one particular night, she was talking about whenever she went to Italy and she saw the statue David. And she got to talking about how it was created, how a statue back then was created, and how you start with a big piece of rock, just a big ugly rock, and they chisel little pieces away. And I hadn't really, thought about how those kind of things were created before. I'm not artistic, not like my husband who's artsy and thinks about those kinds of things, that never crossed my mind. And I thought, and I don't even remember what the rest of the Bible study was, but I just kind of stopped right there, and how that big piece of rock became this creation. Like it looks like a person. If I took a rock and tried to chisel things away, it wouldn't look like anything. It would look terrible. But you look at that statue David, and it's got amazing features. It looks like a man. It's got chiseled, hands and arms. You can see the muscles. You can see the pectoral muscles and the abs and everything. I mean, this thing is anatomically correct. You know what I'm saying? It is an amazing work of art. And there's tons of statues throughout the world the same way. And it got me thinking, when you go to these museums and we look at these statues, or we go to, wherever they put statues, maybe in a library or some other place where people can come and visit, we don't go in and ask to see the broken, chiseled off pieces of rock that the sculptor left behind. We go in and we look at the statue. They don't go in and say, okay, well, that's a nice statue of